Hey guys, it's your boy Wolfie. Now, if you know me, you'll know that I love all forms of RPGs. I love MMOs, I love regular RPGs, I love action RPGs, I love looter shooters, I love them all. I love progression, I love leveling characters, I love killing hordes of enemies. That is my thing, right? So I wanted to make sure I have enough time in this game before I put out a review or any kind of nonsense in the game. So I have 48 hours in the game. I've done pretty much everything we can. I've beaten the game. I've done the hard content. We're still working on progressing on the hard mode from the end game content. It jumps up. The difficulty ramps up once you finish the game. You're actually supposed to go back to normal mode, but we'll get back into that later. Yeah, the story. The story is kind of just an excuse to basically give you a reason as to why you're fighting Abyssal Knight number 45. James the Abyssal Knight caused some drama and you got to kill him. That's all it's there for. It's an excuse, a reasoning as to why you're fighting things. Basic run of the story that you find in the first 5 minutes is your brother betrays you and you're trying to stop him from becoming a god. That's kind of the story the whole way through. They understand that this game's main attraction is in the story, and anyone who's normally used to looters understands that it's not. It's like going to a Godzilla movie to see anything but Godzilla. You know what I mean? It's not there. It's like Monster Hunter World. The story was just there as an excuse as to why you're hunting Nergigante for the 50th time. That's all it is. So if you're looking for a really good story, this is not the game for you. If the epic adventure is what you want, that's not what this game is. It's purely the gameplay. That being said, the voice actors are awesome, right? Cool, let's get into the gameplay part, the most important part of the game. Gameplay is awesome. Fast paced. It'll remind you of every single action game that you've played. You'll be like, oh, it looks like DMC. Oh, it looks like Warframe. Oh, it looks like Dynasty Warriors. Oh, it looks like God of War. It's going to look like everything you've played because it's a hack and slash. And it's really fast. And it's really responsive. And it feels good. Your swings feel well. Your weapon techniques feel well. Like the added passives on the weapons feel amazing. They're awesome. The only negative that I see is there's no animation canceling when it comes to things like abilities, shields, and stuff like that. It feels a little clunky to have to hold the L trigger or L2 and then hit your auto attack button to do your weapon technique, because you can't just do that while you're doing a combo. You have to physically stop for a second and then do it. So that's the only part that feels weird. I wish it was there, but it's not, and it feels like it would improve the gameplay, but by all means, it doesn't mean that the gameplay is bad. It's one thing. Nothing is ever perfect. I've played plenty of games. I just feel like I wish I had more time to use my abilities. I wish this was more impactful. Everything feels impactful for this game. You just feel like you can use those things more often. Because you have to stop swinging and stuff. Yeah, you're going to get punished. You can't just cancel a swing into a dodge or cancel a swing into a parry, which is probably a good thing, but I do wish you can cancel it into your own abilities. You're going to get punished. You're going to get hit. You're going to die. Be careful playing on hard mode because the scaling jumps up really fast and you can run into walls. We have fought a boss for 15 minutes at one point because we were too under geared for it. It was a fun experience. But yeah, you're going to have all those things. It's awesome. Feels great. I'm trying not to get ahead of myself and explain to you how the gear affects the combat. That's how much fun I've been having with the combat. So gameplay, awesome. If that's what you like me, definitely. The game is great for that. Now, let's go into the conversation that everyone is wondering, right? Let's talk into the mechanics of the gameplay, right? And how it affects it, right? So when you get into the game, you're going to see your weapons, right? And your weapons are different elements. You're going to have physical DPS, you're going to have water DPS, air DPS, void DPS, etc., right? The way this works, right, is every single type of DPS is tied to a dot, right? And that dot can only be applied by that DPS of a weapon. So it doesn't matter what Valor plate or that you're using, you cannot apply that dot unless your weapon does that DPS or you pop your Archon's Fury. That's it. That's all. That ties into the items because you're going to see increased damage when the enemy is bleeding, increased damage when they're cursed, chilled, shocked, etc. So this is really important for when you're trying to build up your stuff, right? And not only with all that, they have effects on every item that tie into these things. Like I have an item that when the enemy is chilled, it applies a mark of weakness on them where they do less damage, etc. So all these things start tying into each other. You got to make sure about all that, right? That's awesome. Now there's a whole other section of this. Since you have two types of swings, there's also something called Soul Shatter. You build up Soul Shatter by using your light attack on the enemy. As you're hitting them, you start seeing a highlight of their health. What is happening is you're building up Soul Shatter. You're still doing damage, but you have to cash in the damage. I don't know if you played something like Killer Instinct, where just because you've done it doesn't mean that the damage is actually done. You have to use the heavy attack to cash in the damage and get that big damage going on. So it's like it's encouraging you to use all your buttons. It's encouraging you to press all these things. It feels really good, and seeing those giant numbers jump up are awesome. They also have an entire resource and stat for it. Soul Shatter damage, Soul Shatter build up. Like you can make an entire build about building it up really fast, even though you're doing low damage, and just chunking them for 1,000,000 damage. It's great. It's fantastic. It's called Soul Shatter. When you start seeing it in the video over there, you'll see me popping it on people. Another part of the mechanics is Breach. And what Breach is that every time you hit them with a heavy attack or a normal attack, you start building up a stagger meter, which is on the bottom of their health bar. And it's yellow. When you max that out, they usually fall on the floor for a certain amount of time. You can beat on them for free, or you can hit them with a takedown, which is exactly what it sounds like. And there's another stat that not only builds this up faster, but makes you do more damage while they're on the floor, which is actually really good because most of your damage on the boss is when they're knocked on the floor. Most of the time, not all the time. It's cool. It's awesome. It's just an added part to the combat that makes things different while you're still kind of doing the same thing, and it's just something else to pay attention to. Some characters build up stagger faster than others. Some characters have a shield and you don't actually want to do damage to them. You want to stagger them first because you can stagger them faster, which is why you use heavy hammers and great swords. It's just cool. You're swapping weapons, you're building up these meters, you're cashing in your damage, you're using your weapon techniques. By the way, every single weapon has 2 techniques. Polearm has an AoE, toss the javelin. Longsword has 2 different dashes. Dual Blades has a demon mode like on Monster Hunter World, and a chain grip that pulls people to him like Scorpion. Warhammer dashes backwards and gamma waves people, basically just shoots a shockwave forward, or has a spin attack. Then you have no spin attack and a slam. Then you have Great Sword, which either just literally throws his sword and it comes back, or he spins like Garen. It's awesome. They feel great, and you spam those abilities. They come up so fast. There's so many like stats on items that build it up faster, do more damage. It's awesome. They feel great. Complete opposite situation with the Valor Plates. The weapon techniques are fantastic. Fantastic. Those are the mechanics that I can think of off the top of my head. While we're talking gameplay, we're getting into the mechanics of the combat. The mechanics of the combat are great. There's tons of things going on at the same time, as you can see right here in the codex, right? We have Archon Fury, which is your special ability. You pop it, you do more damage, you summon totems. If that's what your character does, they shoot lasers, things go boom, and you do a lot of damage. It's great. There's different ways to build it. There's items that augment it. It's fantastic. Breach is basically a stagger mechanic. You knock things on the floor, and sometimes the items that you're using or your character may do increased damage while they're knocked on the floor. This is great for characters with shields who don't take a lot of damage. It's easier to knock them down and then beat them up. That's awesome. Also, heavy hits do more. Critical attack, you guys know this. It's the same thing with crit damage. Death blow, they have actives on certain items that will give you benefits for getting the death blow. It's just the last hit, right? And a weak point. Polarity attack is when you auto attack enough times with one weapon, swapping over to your next one has increased damage and does a burst of damage when you swap over. I've seen things in the game that like stagger people when you swap. It'll put an ailment on people like poison or curse. I've seen some crazy things with this. Apparently, there's some builds when you use really fast attacking weapons to keep on building it up and then swapping. It's a whole different style of play. We got Rampage. As you're hitting somebody for a certain amount of times, you get a burst in damage for 10 seconds. This is great during damage windows. Soul Shatter is probably one of the most interesting mechanics I've seen in a game like this. It comes from, it's very similar to Killer Instinct. As you're hitting with your light attack, it's building up a meter on top of their health bar, which is basically the damage you're doing, but you're not doing the damage until you cash it in with a heavy attack. So it's encouraging you to use both your buttons. It's encouraging you to use combos. It's encouraging you to save the burst damage to use it when you want it. It's great. It feels good to see that giant number come off. And sometimes you can actually skip phases by building enough soul shatter damage and popping it. I've skipped an entire boss from doing as one of his phases by just blowing up half its health with the soul shatter damage. It's awesome. Takedown is your standard takedown. Weak points is a very interesting mechanic. It shows either through parrying, blocking, the missing abilities, or if you use a character that exposes the weak points, you have to physically aim your targeter, which is a little dot in the middle of your screen, whether you're using a controller or a mouse, onto the weak point for it to do weak point damage. There's all sorts of like benefits to having weak point damage. Increased damage. Sometimes they spawn explosions. Some items shoot out projectiles every time you hit a weak point. It's fantastic. It's awesome. It's fun to play with. It's a good addition to something that would normally be mindless, and it's just something else to do, and it feels good while you're doing it. Weapon techniques. Every single weapon has 2 techniques. They're awesome. They feel strong. You spam them. Just use them when you have them. Don't save them too much because there's no reason to. You build it up so fast. It really feels good to just use them instead of having something that you have to save for a long time because you're only going to have it once every 5 minutes. You're going to have it every 10 seconds. So have fun with those. Use them. All these things just add to the combat and add to the gameplay, and you actually have to do them. So it's fun. All right. Okay, so let's get into the meat and potatoes, which is basically the end game and progression. Now, when you finish the game, you should be around level 30. Right? When you hit level 30 to finish leveling the last 20 levels, you're going to want to do Dreamstones. Dreamstones are way harder than the story mode, so you may have to lower it down from hard to normal, especially when you get to level 50. These Dreamstones are basically made like roguelikes. Every one of them has 3 of the 4 levels, and they're basically reliving situations that you had during the story mode. You're fighting the bosses again, the enemies again, give or take new mechanics, etc., because you're in the end game. And the idea of it is to be treated like a roguelike in the sense that you're getting buffs based on which level you're choosing. Let's say you want to fight Solaris again. You have to do 2 missions before you fight Solaris. And every mission you do, you have a choice between 2. One of them is usually easier than the other, but the one that's easier usually gives you less benefits, right? So you can often see 2, we're going to reveal 2 rewards and reveal 2 modifiers. If you reveal all the rewards and then you reveal more, you'll add rewards to completing that mission. Right? So let's say your boss only gives you 3 rewards, but you reveal 6. You're going to get 3 extra pieces of gear after killing that boss. I know it says reveal, but that's not what it really means. It means add onto it. This also goes with the modifiers. The modifiers which affect you and the boss, which you'll see on the final picture, right? That affects, so if you see negative 30% damage, you and the boss are doing negative 30% damage. The boons only affect you. When you're choosing the one of the two on one of the other levels, you'll see on the bottom it'll say something like offensive boon, air boon, whatever it may be. Those only affect you. And after you finish the rounds before the final boss of the Dreamstone, you'll be able to choose one of 3 for every level you do. And it's randomized for which ones are there in the category that you selected for the level. So doing these Dreamstones could be different every time. Last time I had one, I was hitting for like 50k because I got the perfect setup of just the modifiers and the damage. It was hilarious. But that's how it works. It makes it a little different. It's an interesting take on Endgame. It's kind of fun. I'm having a blast doing it. It just reminds me of the old action RPG days where I'm farming bosses, so I'm down. The loot is is very very plentiful. It's a lot of it is dropping. There's no hurting on legendaries. They drop literally like candy. If you don't get them one run, you get them in another run. You'll see like 3 or 4 drops sometimes. It's great. It's a lot of fun. Most of your item farming is going to come from doing these Dreamstones. They have the higher drop chance, but they cost resources to get into, and you can those same resources you use to get into them, you use to upgrade. As you can see in the video that can show up right now, it upgrading items and upgrading weapons are awesome. You can upgrade them up to 4 times, I think sometimes 5, I don't really remember. And as you're leveling them, they'll let you add another stat onto them or improve a stat, and the damage will go up or the main stat will go up, and it costs a lot of resources to do so. This same resource is the one that you use to get into the Dreamstones. The Dreamstones also drop other materials for you to upgrade your gear. So you're going to be doing these anyway. Now, to get that Electrium back up, you can either salvage gear or go to the tower, which is the other part of the end game. From what I've noticed, the tower is basically an infinite number of levels that just keeps on getting more difficult with roguelike mechanics, like the boon system. But instead of it being after every level, it randomly spawns on the floors and it randomly gives you one of 3 to choose from. And that's how that works. But it's basically just there to farm materials for Electrium and other stuff. And it's probably your best place to get augments. They drop like candy in there. Same thing with amulets and rings. They're great to find there. And there's also a special kind of weapon, which we're going to show you guys right now. So if you find a weapon in the tower, you get 2 primary abilities on it instead of 1. See how these other ones have 1 ability? Weapons, you can find a weapon in the tower with 2. So good luck with that one. Right? Good luck on that. But that's basically what the end game is. Testing the difficulty, farming mats, or farming items. It's what you would expect from an action RPG like Diablo or PoE. If you're expecting something to play more like Destiny with raids, that's not what this kind of game is. There's no PvP, no nothing. So I hope you like killing mobs. I do. I don't know if you guys will. Yeah, I love it. The itemization of the game feels really, really, really like action RPGs and Borderlands. These items have crazy abilities. I have this hammer that slows time once every 2 minutes for like 15, 20 seconds. I could kill a boss in 15 seconds. If they're just standing still, I will blow them up. It's fantastic. It's these items are ridiculous. You just got to learn how to use them. Some of them have specific things, like hitting a weak point will spawn like fireballs, and they do massive chunks of damage. Things like that are happening in the game, and it's awesome. I love the itemization. And as you level the items up, they just get better. And not only that, there's a whole other system in play called augments. And these augments are items that you get that you put into a tree. And every single Valor plate has a different tree. Some of them have universal slots where you can just put anything in, and some of them have specific slots. So you have to build the character a certain way. And this is part of how you make a Valor plate feel a little different than others. So you might be able to get more water damage on a certain character more than Typhon because he has a better section of augments, and you might be able to put out more damage, and you just might have to mess around with them to figure it out. These things literally get me giggity because I like having fun with these things. And you can even level the augments like you would items. And guess what? The augments also have passives. These things are crazy, right? Like you could look at this one right here, right? The adjacent augments grant an additional 70% spirit. That doesn't sound like a lot, right? But it is, right? 70% extra, and I have 179 and 179. It's awesome. They have water, they have stats on them, they have main stat, and the way it works is that you have to use up to a total amount, which at max level is 50, and you have to make all these add up to basically 100. So you have to pick and choose your augments, not just put the strongest one, and try to find the best combination of stuff that you can do. And then when you find the augments you want, you just level them up. As you can see, some of them have 30, like they have special passives on them as well. This is a great place to get passives. Fantastic place to get passives. So everything in the game is just like adding on top of itself. I don't know about you guys, but I like that stuff. That's my thing. That's my niche. I love that. So if you like items, you like those crazy passives from Diablo Path of Exile, you want to play a hack and slash, you want to play a looter, my guy, this is your game. This game is fun. If you want my specific opinion on it, for me, this is a buy on first day, regardless of what anyone else says. For me, this is a buy on first day. It's not a buy on first day for everybody. There isn't a crazy amount of content. Most people aren't going to get as much time out of this as I am. There isn't really a crazy story. But if you just really need a looter, like I did, you just really need an action RPG, you just really want to play a hack and slash, then yeah, I would recommend this game for those people. But you have to really be into this style of game for me to give you the go ahead to buy it at full price. That's how I feel. So let me know how you guys feel about it in the comments. Let me skip that over real quick. Cut off that whole thing. All right, so now that we gone over the augments, basically my review for this game, my score for this game, right? I'm not going to do a 1 out of 10. I don't like doing a 1 out of 10. For me, for a person like me, I love looters. I love hack and slash games. I love RPGs. This is a buy on first day if that's your kind of game. I love Diablo and Path of Exile. I've played those games for way too many hours. This is my stuff. If you are looking for a story, don't buy. If you're not extremely into the looter shooter genre or the action RPG genre, and you're wondering if you should buy this game, maybe hold out for a sale. Maybe hold out for a sale. There's not a crazy, ridiculous amount of content. It definitely can get repetitive for most players, but if you are a hardcore looter player, you love those kind of games. You love Diablo Path of Exile. You love like games like Dynasty Warriors, and you just want to do some progression. This game filled an itch that other games haven't in a while. I'm having a blast. If you get addicted to these games, you love Borderlands, etc., I would suggest a $60 bundle, 100%. I easily see dropping 50 hours in this game, no problem whatsoever, if that's your kind of thing. But if your main attraction isn't itemization and endgame and playing with your friends and all the other nonsense, then like you can wait for a sale, especially when they add new content in the game, which is planned on in 2021. So by all means, buy it later if that's your case. But the game is extremely fun, and that's how I feel about it. So yeah, for me, definitely a buy. For most other people, maybe wait for a sale, but that's how it is. Thank you guys very much for watching. Let me know how you guys feel in the comments. And if you guys have any more questions, feel free to ask me here or on Twitch, wherever it may be. Thank you guys. Don't forget to subscribe, follow, like, and I'll see you guys later. Deuces.